So now that it's the end of August, it is time for a reading wrap-up. I want to share with you guys everything I've read this month. I've kind of read a wide range of genres. I have traveled in deep space and fought off shape-shifting homunculi. I've chased ghosts around London. I've lived in poverty with George Orwell. I've wandered lonely corridors in an AI-built planet. I've read some sci-fi, some urban fantasy, a memoir-style non-fiction book, and also some manga. So there's a little something for everyone, I suppose. I feel like with such a wide range of books, this is probably going to split my audience a bit, but these are the books I read, and I want to talk about them. Starting with the biggest, most brain-melting book that I read this month, and that is Howling Dark by Christopher Rocchio. This is book 2 in the Sun Eater series. For those of you that don't know, I'm hosting a read-along over on my Discord, and I actually read this one a little sooner than expected. I still have some discussion posts to put up, and a lot of people are reading it at their own pace, so you can still join in on the read-along if you want. I just happened to finish it a little sooner because there's a moment in this book where it's really hard to put down, and I have to say, overall, this was a massive step up from book 1, Empire of Silence. If you don't know, I put up a review for Empire of Silence, a spoiler-free review, and I also put up a spoiler discussion and recap of Empire of Silence, so check out those if you want. I'm probably going to do the same thing for Howling Dark. I just found this book much more interesting. I thought the pacing was better. There's more action in this book. This one builds upon the first book and is better in practically every aspect of it, I would say. If you don't know the Sun Eater series, this is like a very slow, philosophical, introspective space opera. But this one, I feel like the action is finally picking up. There's a lot of big moments here where I just couldn't put the book down. But I really enjoy the philosophical aspects of the protagonist as well. I feel like Hadrian is one of the strongest voices in science fiction right now, and I really enjoyed this one a lot. I had some mixed opinions on the first book. You can go watch my spoiler-free review if you want more info on that. And I was worried that I was gonna have a hard time with this second book as well, because the beginning of it was a little difficult at first because there's this massive time jump. It almost feels like you missed a book in between because there was a big time jump and there's all these new characters and relationships. So it's kind of a lot to wrap your head around at the beginning, but it quickly picks up. I mean, there's a shape-shifting homunculi and an army of bloodthirsty androids within the first 50 pages. Then soon after, there's a lightsaber duel. So it definitely picks up very quickly. The ending third of this novel was my favorite part in the series so far, and I'm very excited now to start on book 3. Oh yeah, I'm also taking notes as I read through Sun Eater for an in-depth summary, so let me know if you want to see some in-depth summaries of this series, because I'm likely gonna make those at some point if you guys are interested. Okay, switching gears completely. The next book I read, well actually I read this one. This was the first book I read in August. Down and Out in Paris and London by George Orwell. I've read 1984, I've read Animal Farm by George Orwell. I've never really heard of Down and Out, but I just decided to pick it up on a whim, and I am so glad I did. This is probably my favorite George Orwell book. For those of you like me who had no idea what this was about, this is Orwell's semi-autobiography, and it explores poverty, and wow, it is quite devastating. This is the most real look at poverty that I've read, and despite these observations and commentary being from the experiences of a man nearly 100 years ago, it's still incredibly relevant today. It resonates with the modern audience, and I can't recommend reading this one enough. The people that he describes, the fatigue that he describes of the working class, it's all very relevant today. When you read this book, when you read George Orwell's descriptions, you feel the dirt and the grime under your fingernails, and you go through these experiences with him. The Paris sections is like this deep dive of how brutal the grind is of working kitchen work. The whole London section is like, it's soul crushing, but it's so interesting to read. And the characters that he describes, knowing that it's autobiographical, I feel like there's definitely parts he's probably exaggerated or like switched characters around or switched the timing around. But knowing that a lot of this is actually true, to me, that it was just so interesting to learn this about George Orwell. I don't really know much about George Orwell at all. Like I said, I've read 1984 and I read Animal Farm, but I don't actually know anything about George Orwell. Now I want to read more of his work. I kind of want to find out if there's like a documentary on his life, because that would be so interesting. But this isn't just misery for the sake of misery. Given the whole premise of this book, I thought it was just going to be very dry and boring. I was very surprised at how hooked I was reading this, and I was reading this like late at night, like 2 in the morning, because I couldn't put it down. This was actually the first published work by George Orwell, and something that really stood out to me as unique was just how the humanizing effect he gave to the poorest of the poor in the 20th century in London and Paris. He just made them feel so human. And like I said, these people, these same people, exist nowadays. I think I would say this is my favorite work by Orwell so far. It feels very honest, and it kind of feels like you're traveling with him. I do think I enjoyed the Paris sections a lot more than the London ones, probably because of Boris and Hotel X and the whole time at the restaurant. But the London section was still really engaging. I never felt bored reading this. He really paints a vivid picture of Western Europe pre-war, and I just found this book so fascinating. So I think if you've never read this one, I highly recommend giving it a read. Even if it's not something you would generally read, I highly recommend picking it up. The Lesser Devil by Christopher Rocchio. For those of you that don't know, this is a novella that is meant to be read after the first book, Empire of Silence. So I actually read this one before getting into Howling Dark, and I'm really glad that I did. This one surprised me. I heard from a lot of people that this novella is actually kind of slower, it's not really necessary, it doesn't give you that much information, so I was almost gonna skip this one, but I'm glad I didn't. In this novella, we follow Crispin, who is the brother of the protagonist, Hadrian, in the main series, and you know, Hadrian always has this view of Crispin. He thinks his brother is cold and a brute, but you kind of get the hint that there's more to Crispin than just Hadrian's opinion, and here we explore that, and I was so surprised to find that Crispin has a lot of depth to him. Like, I feel like in this novella, Crispin gets more character growth than what a lot of authors give their main protagonist in full novels. Something I really like about this novella is that the author is trusting you to retain information. He's not giving you a big recap of book 1 and reintroducing the characters. I feel like a lot of novellas do that, and it kind of just wastes your time. I did find some of the side characters to be very interesting in this one as well, like Jean-Louis and Laurent, I believe it was. But the standout here is obviously Crispin. I just really enjoyed getting his point of view, and I find it funny how he talks about Hadrian being kind of cold, when that's exactly how Hadrian thought of him. So it's so interesting getting both perspectives of these brothers. Another highlight for me was Sabine. I'm not going to spoil anything about this book, but Sabine was a big surprise to me, and I just really enjoyed her character and the relationship there. Overall, I think this novella does a really great job at building more to the world that Rocchio is creating here. This book also explores this group of French Catholics who have survived, and it's so interesting how Crispin, he kind of views Catholics as pagans to his religion, and he believes he's heard all these stories of how how they drink blood and eat flesh, and he kind of views them as some dark pagan cult, but he doesn't really realize that the religion he follows, the Chantry, is really just a mix of ancient Christianity and Hinduism and Buddhism and Islam and even some Arthurian myth and Roman paganism. And just seeing Crispin kind of grow as a character and begin to care for those below him, I thought was really powerful. I really enjoyed this novella. I don't think this novella is vital at all for the main Sun Eater series, so you can skip it, but I found it to be really enjoyable, so I wouldn't hesitate to give it a read. Next up, we have Rivers of London by Aaron Aronovich. This one I really enjoyed. This is like an urban fantasy with a lot of dry British humor. I don't think this is going to work for everyone, but I did enjoy it. There's some aspects I'm hoping it will improve in the sequels, but overall I had a lot of fun reading this. I started off reading the physical edition, and then I switched over to the audiobooks, and I highly recommend the audiobooks. I feel like the narrator just adds a lot of character to some of the dialogue and some of the prose that felt kind of dry, a little boring at times. I feel like he just added a lot of character to those side characters, and yeah, highly recommend the audiobooks. In this series, we follow Peter Grant, a rookie cop who accidentally stumbles into the magical underbelly of London and gets recruited as a kind of wizard in training for the Metropolitan Police. This felt like just a really fun, light read, kind of a palate cleanser in between reading Sun Eater, which is much more dense, but I had a lot of fun with this. It's very witty, very British. It's basically an urban fantasy mixed with a British police procedural, and it uses a lot of those tropes and whatnot of police procedurals. I'm really excited to read more in this series. It's a really quick read, it's easy to get into. I'm probably gonna stick with the audiobooks, I think, because the narrator is just so good. I'm actually traveling to London later this year, which is why I decided to pick this one up, and I really like how you can tell that the author, he knows the streets of London very, very well. So I highly recommend checking out Rivers of London, especially if you're a fan of urban fantasy stories like the Dresden Files. I feel like this is very different from the Dresden Files at the same time, but they do share some similarities. So I think if you like the Dresden Files, you're likely gonna like Rivers of London as well. And I'm probably gonna make a more in-depth review on these books once I read some more of them. Now talking about manga. One of the mangas I read this month that I really want to talk about is, I feel like this is building up to be like a masterpiece. I love it. Blame? But apparently you pronounce it Blam. Blam Volume 1. This is the Master Edition, and I just picked this up on a whim. I was reading it on my phone, and I decided, no, I need to stop right now and pick up a physical copy, because the artwork in this manga is like the main part of it. There's not even that much dialogue in this story. It's mostly just art. And you might think that that makes it much quicker to read than most manga, because it's just art for the most part. And while it is quicker than a lot of manga, there's so many moments you just want to stare at the art and take it all in. And I highly recommend that you do. There's so much small detail to the artwork here. And this story is just... I'm really glad I picked this up. In Blam, we follow Killy, and Killy is a wanderer armed with a powerful gravitational beam emitter, and he's traversing this sprawling monolithic megastructure known as the city. It's basically like a Dyson sphere, like an artificial planet that's been created by AI, and Killy is searching for the last surviving humans that have this rare net terminal gene. And from what I gather, these genes are key to access the net sphere and retake control of the city, and hopefully stop all the rogue machines and the chaotic expansion. Basically, the city is just ever expanding. The AI is just creating more and more city, but none of it really makes sense because they're not making it for humans. They're just it's just creating more and more. And there's all these rogue AI, there's these synthetic life forms that he has to fight off. Along the way, Killy faces off against silicone-based life forms and encounters pockets of civilization lost in the concrete labyrinth. I was really surprised when I picked this one up because it really speaks to me, because I'm writing a story that has like a man-made planet. There's kind of some similar themes of like loneliness, of this ancient megastructure labyrinth, and there's a lot of those same themes here in Blam. So to me, I just found it so interesting. Like when I picked this up, I was like, wow, the city is kind of reminding me a little bit of the world that I'm creating, but mine's much more fantasy-based, where this is more sci-fi. But regardless of all of that, this manga is much more about the atmosphere over the actual plot. It's about the mystery and finding out what's going on and picking up on the small snippets of lore that are dropped. It's kind of difficult to wrap your head around what is actually happening because there isn't a lot of plot to go off of. Actually, a lot of the plot is the art. Like, you just have to get the visual cues of what's going on. The narrative is intentionally sparse so that it focuses in on the loneliness and the kind of haunting atmosphere that this character is in. And just, man, like, there's nothing I have read like this. I 100% want to make like a full deep dive video essay on Blam as soon as I finish it. But this is definitely for readers who are into kind of like mood and atmosphere and ambiguity and like slowly unraveling and figuring out what's going on. If you like that type of story and, you know, you like sci-fi, I highly recommend checking out Blam. This one surprised me so much and I can't wait to read more. And like I said, you probably want to get the physical editions because the art is like the main appeal. It's so much better seeing the art like on these gigantic editions rather than just reading it on your phone. I've also been getting back into reading One Piece. I really regret stopping making One Piece videos when like the first one didn't do that great. I should have just kept making more of them because I probably still just need to find the audience that wants to watch those, because obviously not everybody on my channel is into manga, not everyone's going to enjoy One Piece, but I really want to make those videos, and I'm definitely going to be making a return to One Piece this year. I'm returning to my ultimate reviews of One Piece. In order to do that, I decided to just restart One Piece from the Baratier arc and just continue reading from there. I'm now up to like volume 15, I believe. I'm not that far into it, but I have some reviews coming maybe October. I have some other videos I need to make before I return to making some One Piece content. But yeah, I hope you guys want to see it. I love One Piece, and I'm really excited to finally dive into the manga more. I even bought like all 4 box sets of One Piece because I've just been enjoying it so much, and because I did that, I'm now dedicated to reviewing them on the channel. And then, because I can't help but read multiple series at once, I also started a reread of Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is just kind of a comfort series for me. I love Dragon Ball. It's actually been a long time since I've read it, but I read the first 2 volumes this month, and it still holds up really well. Like, Dragon Ball is just so fun, it's so whimsical, it's so goofy at times. Toriyama is so creative. There's so much creativity in this story, so much charm to the story as well. Young monkey-tailed Goku meets teenage inventor Bulma, and together they embark on a wild quest to collect the 7 mystical Dragon Balls, capable of granting any wish. Their journey is full of quirky encounters, villains, allies, and classic antics inspired by Journey to the West, all rendered in Toriyama's signature blend of humor and creativity. These 2 volumes breeze by so fast, and they're so entertaining. And even though you pick up on some of those shonen classic tropes, this still holds up very well. Like, this is such a great story. It's a classic, and I would say it's a must-read for any manga fan. And that's everything that I read in August. Let me know what you guys read this month. Let me know if you've read any of these stories, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to see more reading wrap-ups and lore videos and deep dives and in-depth summaries, make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys soon.